Hello there, people of the tube. I am back in the motorhome of power here. It's windy and mosquitoes, and yeah, so I'm just in here today. I was unsure of what I was going to talk about today. I have a list of stuff, but I like to let things come to me if I can, and just save the list because it's going to be. I got quite a few videos to go here, and that list is going to come in handy. So, yeah, I was thinking about what I was going to say. And so, what I'm going to talk about is our story, right? So, now in addiction, in AA, in any of those things, our story is about our addiction, right? So, how it started, what happened during, when we got to treatment, or AA or NA or however we stopped, and then what our life is like after, right? But the main reason to tell your story, or at least to put it down on paper, right, is to get it clear in your mind, right? It's when you keep it up in your head and you think about it over and over and over, but you don't actually write it on paper, right? It kind of gets trapped up there. That's what I've noticed, right? And when I'm talking about your story, I'm talking about addiction, right? But I'm also talking about your health story, right? So if you have had health issues, cancer or diabetes, or like me, my right side was shutting down, right? Maybe you've had a bad liver, fatty liver disease, or something like that, right? Again, you should write your story down, the story of your health journey, right? Did you have that health problem, or were you super healthy or unhealthy as a kid? As you go through your teenage years, 20s, when did that health issue really become a problem? When did you notice it affecting your life, right? Did it take a doctor telling you, or did you start feeling things? Did you start noticing changes in your body? If you're going through a health issue, right, then you should, again, do your story up to that point and see if there's an underlying cause, if there's a reason for that maybe the medical system doesn't tell you, right? Maybe they don't even know, right? But you might be able to put it together and say, oh, look at this little thing here happened. And then after that happened when I was 15, 16, then this and this and this happened. And before I was 16 or 15, I really liked to play sports. I really liked to do this. I really liked to run or paddle my canoe or whatever, right? And then all of a sudden at 15, 16, this certain thing happens. I fall and really hurt my head, right? And then from that point on, my balance is off. I'm not as coordinated feeling. I don't have that desire and that energy to do those athletic things or those outdoor activities that I used to do, right? And so you put together that, after I fell, that's what happened, right? So then you can say to yourself, okay, well, what causes that when you fall, right? So the top vertebrae in your spine that goes right underneath your cranium is your atlas. And if that gets pushed out of whack in any way, it's going to affect the whole spinal column all the way down, which is going to affect your mood, your mind, and your spirit, right? You're not gonna, your balance, like all that stuff is affected by that one vertebrae. By any vertebrae, but that's the very top one, right? And when people fall and hit their head backwards, or, that atlas can be knocked out of position, right? So there's an example for the health, right? The addiction part is okay, so how is your family life, right? Up into whichever point when you started that addiction. When did that addiction start? Right? When was that addiction started? Was it started when you started drinking or using drugs? Or was it actually started before that? Were you lying, cheating, stealing? Were you feeling like an outcast? Was there a divorce? And then all of a sudden, a year or two later, the addiction starts? These are questions we have to ask ourselves, right? And it goes back to that, like Tim Fletcher, that complex trauma that affects our lives. With the health, falling, that's a trauma, right? And a divorce is a complex trauma, because now it's an emotional trauma. And all these things get stuck in our bodies, and they cause issues, right? And sometimes it's an addiction issue. Sometimes it's a eating disorder, which is another addiction issue, right? Sometimes we cut ourselves off from the world and we become very introverted. Again, sometimes we stop doing the things we love doing because something has happened in our lives to make us not want to do that. Right? We don't see the fun in it anymore. Right? And when you write your story out, it helps you with all that. It helps you figure all that stuff out. You can work it out on paper as you're doing it. When I work with sponsees in AA or NA, whichever one, because I work in both, I get them to write their story. Right? In AA, the fourth step is to make a fearless moral inventory of yourself. Right? So all the resentments and hurts and pain and hatreds and disliked, whatever, all that stuff about yourself and about others, about situations, ex-bosses, ex-wives, all that stuff. You put that all on paper, right? How you feel about that situation, right? How that situation's affected you. And what can you do about that situation? Is there anything you can do? Can you apologize to them? Right? We're supposed to apologize as long as it doesn't affect them or others. So you don't want to hurt anyone, just to fix your own skin. Right? But maybe before, like a lot of times before we do our step 4, writing your story out is a way to figure out all those people, right? I know when I was drinking and using drugs that I hurt a lot of people that I didn't even remember hurting. Right? I had no clue that I had done anything like that. But as I was writing out my story, and I was going from teenager to 33, all these things started to come to me, right? I would write the story to a point. I would go to bed. And the next day, maybe I was at work or whatever, and then all of a sudden, poof, oh, what about so-and-so? What about Joe? What, right? I stole from him. I stole his booze because I was a drunk and I wanted his booze and he was passed out. So I drank it all and then I went home. Right? Completely forgot all about that. Didn't think about that again, right? After that fact, until I started writing my story out, right? Now with your health, you're writing your story out, and all of a sudden, whoa, hey, when I was playing soccer, that guy tripped me, and I hurt my knee, but it wasn't really enough to go to the hospital. And everybody said, oh, just walk it off, it'll be fine. Just like my ankle, right? As I told you in a past story. And I did, but from that day on, I never wanted to play soccer again because I couldn't play, right? My knee was always bothering me, right? Maybe it was a year or two after that incident that it started to bother you, right? Because again, our bodies can compensate for stuff for a long time. So we have to think about that stuff, right? And writing it down really clarifies it, right? It really clarifies what actually took place right? Because in our mind, it goes all over and it's a mess and it's here and there. And how do you keep it straight? How do you keep the timeline straight? How can you look back and say, oh, okay, well, after so many years, this is where I was. And here I am at this point in my life, and here I am at that point in my life, and I've gone out with this woman and that woman, or this man and that man, whatever it is, and that relationship ended this way, and it was ended poorly, and that relationship ended by them cheating on me, and then after that point, the next relationship, I always thought they were cheating on me, and then so on and so on and so on, right? And now I'm at the point, not me, but just hypothetical, that I don't want any more relationships because I've been cheated on. And it started way back here, right? It started way back there. And it's still affecting me to this day. Now, how do I get over that? How do I work through that problem, right? How do I forgive those people from the past and forgive myself? Right? For accusing someone. Right? These are the things we have to ask ourselves, whether it comes to emotional healing, physical healing, addiction healing. Right? It doesn't matter what healing it is. Writing out your story is going to help you figure out where those problems started. And shit, man, from what I hear from a lot of psychologists I listen to and read about, is it can happen way back when we're kids and we don't even know. Right? Our subconscious completely blocks it out. So again, like it's not 100% guaranteed that you're going to figure it out, but it's really going to get you thinking. And then if you can't see it in those years, in your life story, maybe it did happen way back before you were 6, right? And maybe you got to look at that, right? Maybe you got to go and see somebody and get hypnotized and go back, right? And help that inner child heal from the physical, the mental, the emotional, right? The addiction. A lot of times it is letting that inner child heal. Even as a teenager, even if you're 15, you're still a child, right? You're still very susceptible to being hurt and not understanding that it's not your fault, right? I know I did. I blame myself for fucking almost everything, right? Especially when I was young. I thought if I could just be this really good kid that did their homework and cleaned the house and did all that stuff, that it would help my family life, right? But it didn't, because it wasn't my problem to fix, right? It was my mom and dad's problem to fix, and unfortunately they didn't do it. They didn't repair their emotional or physical or spiritual or addiction issues, right? One's an enabler and the other one's dead from alcohol and prescription pills, right? Doctor just kept feeding him fucking prescription pills, even though he knew he was mixing with alcohol, right? Thanks, doctor. And not just one. I mean, I'm sure my stepdad saw probably 50 doctors in his life. right? And they'd all give them prescriptions, even though they knew. How do you not smell it on a person when they drink right from the minute they wake up to the minute they fucking fall asleep? It oozes out of them. And you tell me that you're sitting in a little room and you can't smell that person, right? Like, it's mind blowing to me that this is our system. But this is our system, right? They don't seem to care, right? The powers that be way up here don't seem to care whether we're emotionally damaged, physically damaged, addictive damaged, psychologically damaged. They don't care. I think they actually want us to be like that, so that we're easily controlled, right? If you're super healthy and you're happy and you're not addicted to anything and you're living your best life, right? Is it easy to control you? Right? Is it easy to manipulate you into doing stupid things? No. You're going to see right through that shit. Right? But it's really easy to manipulate someone who's drunk or high all the time, or sick with cancer or diabetes or heart disease. Right? It's really easy to manipulate them. And it's really easy to take all their money. Right? And keep them broke and poor and not living their best life, right? All their money goes to either booze, drugs, prescription drugs, right? Their whole life revolves around that. And so it steals their life. It steals our lives from us. And the best way to fight that is to look at your life, write your story out. Write it out. And look at what goes on during that lifetime of yours and where those problems occurred or started or maybe could have started, right? We don't know for sure, right? But chances are, if you're 12 years old and your parents get divorced, and it's not a good divorce either, like a very messy divorce, there's a pretty good chance that a lot of your emotional and addiction problems started at that point, right? Or right around that point. Because like me, I was never taught how to deal with disappointment or rejection or how to de-stress properly or any of that stuff. I was never taught that by my parents. Now, if you're going through a divorce and your parents aren't thinking anything about that, right? They're so worried about who's going to get the house and who's going to get the car and splitting everything up and who's the kids, who's going to stay with who, and right? They're not thinking about helping you, go see a counselor so that you can work through the issues of them splitting up. Right? Maybe the odd family, like again, there's the odd family that would realize that, and really make a point of that. But I'd say 95% of the families are not like that, right? They're just kind of day by day, day to day, getting by, right? Like, and I'm sure their parents didn't teach them how to handle stress properly and how to handle disappointment properly and all that stuff, because they were never shown. Their parents were never shown. Their grandparents were never shown. None right? It's generational all the way down, right? What really bothers me as a personal trainer is when people say to me, "Oh, diabetes runs in my family," right? Which is straight bullshit, right? The reason diabetes runs in your family is because you learn the same traits from your father and your grandfather or your grandma and grandpa, whatever, dad, and so you learn how to live through from them. You learn how to eat. You learn how to de-stress. You learn all those things from them. And it's not good. So you just keep repeating the same problems that they had, right? So yeah, okay, dad died at 56 and grandpa died at 52 and great-great-grandpa died at 58, right? Oh, it's genetic, it's genetic, it's genetic. No, it's because y'all ate crappy food and didn't exercise and didn't learn how to de-stress properly. And your heart couldn't take it. Or you were a workaholic and that's all you did and that's where you that's where you died. Right? These are, but people don't think that way. But it's the truth, right? It's just like the addiction. Okay, so 15% of your problems are the addiction, and 85% is the way you live your life, right? So 15% of your diabetes problem is genetic, and the other 85% is the shit that you eat and the lack of exercise that you do, right? When you go to the gym and you lift weights, your muscles burn glucose, sugar, for 48 hours after that. Right? You don't even have to do anything else. You just go for that half an hour, you lift your weights, you work out, you sit sweating, and for 48 hours after that, your body burns the sugar off that you're eating. Right? So how do you get diabetes? You don't go to the gym and you eat a bunch of sugar and you sit on your ass, and then your body can't burn the sugar off, and it builds up in your blood, and then you get diabetes. Pretty simple, right? Pretty simple, but whose family tells them that? Whose family teaches them that? No one. Very few, right? Who listens? Right? Who's going to listen to me and believe that? I don't know. Very few, right? They're going to believe their doctor. Here, take this metformin for the rest of your life, right? I got a friend that's doing that. He has a gym membership he doesn't use, and he takes metformin instead because it's easier. Hey, let's take some Ozempic, right? It destroys your liver and your kidneys and everything else, your organs, but you know what? You're going to lose weight because you're not going to be hungry anymore. Right? Fuck going to the gym. Fuck going for a walk after supper. Right? Let's just take some Ozempic. Like, it's crazy. If you're going through any sort of physical, mental, emotional, addiction problem, write your story out. Write your story out and really think about it, look at it. I can almost guarantee you're going to see patterns that create the problem that you're in. And with that, you guys, another day. It's been a great day. I'm sunburnt. My neck goes red. I am a literal redneck my whole life. I was working my garden up, got it rotilled, and I will be planting stuff in the next couple of days. It's a little behind, but you know what? I still got lots of time to get my potatoes in and my tomatoes in the ground, and I'm super stoked. Right? I haven't been able to garden for years. This is my first year back. I'm super happy, and please subscribe. Please comment. I love the comments. I don't get too many of them. I don't know why, but the ones I get are awesome, right? I did a video about grounding. I had a great comment about the grounding and how they saw that difference in their life, right? And it was amazing. I love that comment. So comment, like, subscribe. Come back tomorrow. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.